Brazil was everyone's second favourite team. The coach now, and this is a big thing, is Carlo Ancelotti, and he's loving it. It's the most important thing of the nation. They make sacrifices for their national team that European players just wouldn't make. You read some stuff about Brazilian football, it's all a carnival and everyone's trying to express themselves and no one cares how many goals they concede, and that is just absolute rubbish. It's all about winning. The collapse in 2014, that's all about not being able to live up to the tradition of being winners.
Is there a legacy to that defeat?
It's now entered the vocabulary. You could refer to any defeat in any walk of life as a 7-1. Social media just rages when players from Wolves are picked up or so, or are selected. West Ham, even Tottenham Hotspur, clubs that are fighting relegation.
Like, we get called arrogant.
Yeah.
And maybe we are, but like Brazil are basically, like the Man United or the Liverpool of world football.
Yeah.
But I don't mind them.
There are adults walking around who've never seen their country be world champion. And in those 24 years, every World Cup campaign has ended as soon as they've come up against a European side in the knockout stages. Now, 94, the last time it was in the States, it was the last time that Brazil had gone 24 years without winning the World Cup. So there's a little omen for you.
Hello, I'm Matt Forde from talkSPORT. This is How to Win the World Cup. In the run-up to the summer, I'm going to be talking to some of the biggest characters and brightest minds about what it takes to win the greatest prize on earth. No, not a Nando's black card, the World Cup. Today we're talking about one of the most iconic footballing nations in history, Brazil.
Neymar from the yard out. Brazil have the lead. What a pace of goal, and it's steered in by finishers. Teasing up for Rafinha.
We're joined by the authority on all things South American football. It's Tim Vickery. And alongside me once again is comedian and star of the Screen Rock podcast, Jacob Hawley. Jacob, when I say the words to you, Brazil and World Cup, what springs to mind?
I still think of them winning it.
Yeah.
Even though, when we're going to talk about this, the fact it's been a while now, which feels mad, I still think of them as favourites every tournament. I think, and if you draw them in a knockout game, it's like, okay, start packing your bags, it's over.
Yeah, because people say, they haven't won it since 2002. But you're like, that's only 5 World Cups.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for English fans, it's like, my parents haven't seen us win a World Cup. But then I guess relative to that, you think of like teams like France who've done well recently. And it is weird to think that they're, even in South America, Argentina have had success. It's weird to think that they're not a superpower that I just assumed they would always be when I was growing up.
And it is... Have they recovered from that Germany game?
I still remember the faces of some of the players.
David Luiz.
David Luiz. I feel so sorry for David Luiz. I think, I honestly think there's 2 things with David Luiz. One, that game, right? Yeah. And he actually had a really good tournament in that World Cup. He had other moments where he was great in that World Cup. But also, I think his hair makes people sort of remember him as this sort of like sideshow Bob, clown show defender. He's won everything, everywhere. He's played for like every good team in Europe. Like he's an amazing defender. Yeah. But I think that game and him in that game has just scarred everyone's. It's tainted his legacy, and that's the legacy of one of the best centre backs Europe's had in the last 20 years, in my opinion. Yeah,
but it's like one game that I guess became. Maybe we've over-exaggerated its importance, but watching Brazil concede that many goals,
it just doesn't happen.
Anytime.
It doesn't happen. I can't think of another like international superpower like Brazil ever having a knockout game like that finished in that fashion.
It was almost like the global financial crash. You feel like the UN should have said, right, we're just going to like reassure the markets, like Western society still exists. It was so big.
But it'd be interesting to hear from Tim like what the legacy of that game is on Brazilian fans. Do you know what I mean? On how they feel about their team and whether their confidence in their national team has recovered since that.
Yeah, because they don't. Like, we get called arrogant.
Yeah.
And maybe we are. But, like, Brazil are basically, like the Man United or the Liverpool of world football.
Yeah.
But I don't mind them.
Well, I think the Man United is an interesting comparison because I think it's almost, I don't mind Man United anymore. because they're not competitive
they're rubbish.
anymore. Because they're rubbish, exactly. I as a fan of Arsenal, who years ago they were the rivals. Years ago they were the reason you wouldn't win things. I've almost got a sort of like Stockholm syndrome nostalgia for the days of Man United being the problem.
Like you do with old Tories.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah, exactly.
Ken Clark was all right.
Yeah, God, that was all right, wasn't it? But it was that and not actual reform fascism. Whereas now, and it's the same with Brazil. It's like now, it's like you sort of look at the team, like, oh, it'd be quite fun to play Brazil now.
Yeah.
Whereas years ago, it's like, pack your bags, you're going home. That's the end of your tournament.
They're probably, are they the most intimidating? I think when I think of like some of the big games, like Argentina was intimidating because one, they were good, but also there was like the political dimension.
Right.
So like the Falklands, obviously like 86 is like part of the context of why the rest of the world doesn't give a toss that Maradona cheats. And then that is still like a legacy in 1998. But with Brazil, we don't really have any beef with them.
No.
We're kind of in awe of them.
Everyone likes the vibe. Do you know what I mean? Like Yoga Benito football, it's fun. It's you think of Brazilian players, you think they're the good ones to watch. Whenever there is a World Cup on, and there's been a few of these of like, you look for the England games, put them in the calendar, and then if there is any other games, you're going to be like, I'll get the boys round, have a drink and watch that. It's Brazil.
But so have we learned anything from them? Like, because they seem to play football in a different way. Like, have we? Because England players now are probably more technical than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But we still don't play football with like that loose. Surely there's nothing like massively genetically different.
I think it's just. I think it's about your mental, like how you feel.
We just don't have fun doing it.
I just think they're happier than us.
Yeah, it's as simple as. And is that just like the climate?
England play miserable football because we live in a miserable country.
Yeah.
Like they've got carnivals, they've got beaches. Of course they're doing kick-ups.
We got last night of the proms. We've got the Chelsea Flower Show.
It doesn't make me want to do a step over. Do you know what I mean? I don't think of Kew Gardens to start back healing of football.
No, that's true. But we've got like Glasgow, and we've got Reading and Leeds.
I think the more you think about it, actually, the more the sort of vibe of a nation does dictate the kind of football they play.
Yeah.
Germany, it's efficient football.
Yeah.
England's miserable football.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Brazil, fun
Under
football.
pressure.
Fun football.
Burdened by our history.
Yeah.
Not quite sure whether we're the good guys or the bad guys. But like, depends who we're playing, really.
Yeah.
Against some, we're like, well, we beat them for good reasons.
Yeah,
We invaded them.
Others, it doesn't feel great, yeah.
It sort of depends who we're playing. So Brazil, lots of Brazilians at Arsenal.
At the moment, yeah. I don't know. I think Gabriel Magalhães, the centre-back, will go and start. I think it looks like Gabriel Martinelli, even though he doesn't always start for Arsenal, probably will start for Brazil, where Rodrigo's got a big injury now. Gabby Jesus, I'm not sure. I mean, this is a funny thing with Brazil. They don't really have strikers at the moment. So I don't know whether Gabby Jesus might make the playing.
Igor Jesus might make the plane.
I think he's certainly further ahead than Gabby Jesus is.
Murillo?
Mate, I really like Murillo. We were just talking about this before. I really rate Murillo.
Oh,
but there's a few in the Premier League. You know, like Esteval.
Yeah.
Could be starting for Brazil. You know, Casemiro probably still go. There's more than ever. It feels like there's a lot of Brazilian players in the Premier League now.
Because we never had, like, when Brazil was in its pomp, we never
They're all
had
around Madrid.
Yeah.
They're all in Spain.
They were never here.
Yeah.
So that's good. That, like, or does that show?
As Brazil have got worse, they're all in the Premier League.
They're all in the Premier League. Yeah. So Brazil are fourth favourites to win it this summer.
Yeah.
Behind England, where the bookies are ranking as
crazy.
If we were drawn against Brazil this time, do you think we'd be as intimidated as we have been in the past?
The reason I don't think we would is that thing of a lot of these players play in the Premier League now. If not, they play in the Champions League, and our players will have played them.
So that mystery is removed.
I think the mystery's removed, but also like I think England have got the players now that can. You know, I've seen English midfielders and defenders deal with Esteval.
Yeah.
I mean, Arsenal themselves dealt with Vinny Jr. last year in the Champions League. You know, I look at their defence and our strikers can get around them. I think man to man now. You called it earlier, like England. And I feel almost uncomfortable saying it. I know, I'm touching everything wooden while I say it, but England have got the talent to compete with Brazil now. Whereas the talent at Brazil, it just doesn't feel as mystical and terrifying as it did 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Because they were like another land. And like, we didn't get to see them play.
Even with Neymar 10 years ago, that was a player. It's just like, if he has a game, you're not stopping him.
No.
There's not... I don't think you say that about any of Brazil's players now, do you?
Not the ones that we see in the Premier League.
But even a Vinny Jr., like, I don't want to talk down on him, but I've seen him be stopped. And
Yes.
whereas players like Neymar and those players that came before that, you just knew that if they had a game where they just wanted to run a game and just win it themselves, they just would. Whereas I just don't see that in Brazil anymore.
Well, on that bombshell, let's talk to our special guest today. It's Tim Vickery.
I grew up watching Brazilian football. I love it. R9, unbelievable player.
Yep.
Ronaldinho, Ronaldinho danced every goal he scored.
It's almost like in the World Cup, if it's not going to be England, you want it to be Brazil. You know that feeling of them being like your second team.
At Chelsea now, you're going to see the real João Pedro. It's always been, I want to be the best. I want to play for my national team. I want to be the new R9.
We can talk about the feeling of a certain shirt that supersedes form, talent of a particular time. But the Brazilian shirt is heavier than most, I think.
Just so much talent, especially in them attacking areas. If that's what you're asking me, who's the biggest threat, I'd probably say Brazil.
Tim, welcome to the show. You've been the authority on South American and Brazilian football for a while now. What's your first memory of seeing Brazil at a major tournament?
My first World Cup was 74. I was just turned 9. And that shadow of 1970 was really, I remember my dad saying, look, you've got to see this. You've got to see this. This is going to be fantastic. And I remember the disappointment of the first game as 0-0 draw with Yugoslavia. 0-0 draw with Scotland. They got through Zaire because the Zaire goalkeeper threw one in his own net. And they ended up going out to Holland and kicking the Dutch all over the place. So the first one was a little bit of disappointment, I think. But still today, I think that shadow of Mexico 70, that's the bar, isn't it? That's the one that everyone's always expecting. We've seen fleeting bits of it sometimes over the years. And I'm old enough to, I was 17 in 82. And them going out of that World Cup, but they were a fabulous side to watch. It felt like something had gone wrong with nature itself when they got eliminated from that World Cup. So there's always that buzz and that anticipation. But there was that key change in the 90s, and I felt it between 94 and 98, because it's just after 94 that I moved out there. And 94, the English fan, the British fan, you didn't really know any of the players before the World Cup. And you got to know them during the course of the World Cup. Then, mid-90s, Nike get involved. And the thinking behind it is, they've tried with basketball, they've realised that football is the global game. And even much more then, I think, than now, Brazil was everyone's second favourite team, which was a little bit based on that mystery.
Yes.
You know? And so Nike got the rights, got the shirt and so on. And I don't know if you remember the advert.
Oh, in the airport where they're popping the ball around.
Yes.
Iconic.
And see, I was there, and that really made me, to be honest, because in the build-up to that World Cup, suddenly there was a massive interest in the Brazilian national team. So come 98, and from 98 onwards, the British fan before the World Cup knows most of the players, and that's even more the case now, because as you were saying, so many of them play in the Premier League.
And what is it about South American football that captured you so much? Because
it's important, and it really is. I mean, it is the most important thing of the nation. You know, the Brazil shirt, the Argentina shirt, the Uruguay shirt. And Uruguay is such a great example. As the famous phrase goes, you know, other countries have their history, Uruguay has its football. So it really, really matters. And I love, and even for the less traditional nations, you know, when they're lining up before a World Cup game, they're like shouting to the rest of the world, you know, hey, we exist.
So why does it matter to them in a way that, because obviously we would say in England it matters, in Germany it matters, but what are you saying it matters more to them there? And
much more.
What is the difference?
Much more.
Why?
No comparison, because when you think of even Brazil, which has got a lot of things going on, you know, it's a huge country, but internationally, what do you think of? You will think of carnival and samba, perhaps. You will think of the Amazon rainforest, and you'll think of football.
Yeah.
And if it's Uruguay, you'll think of football, and you won't think of anything else. You might think of Frei Bentos. That's it.
It's Frei Bentos from Uruguay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a town in Uruguay. It's where Mr. Arsenal fan there, Lucas Torreira, was born.
Yes,
he is the man from Frei Bentos.
But hang on, so the pies are named after the place.
Well, and Uruguay grew relatively rich on after refrigeration was invented on beef exports. on bully beef. So yeah,
I thought Frey Bentos was like Bernard Matthews or something.
Well, you thought it was a man?
I thought it was a person.
What, a man called Frey?
Or like Faye. Sounds a bit like Faye. I was one of those old-fashioned names.
Colonel
chunky
Sanders
butcher from somewhere.
Colonel Sanders is a geezer, and Frey Bentos is a place.
People will have tuned into this podcast to learn about the Brazil team ahead of the World Cup. They're just learning about pie.
It just feels like such a British thing, Frey Bentos.
Yeah.
On what you were saying there, Tim, about the importance of the World Cup to Brazilian players, I've sort of read about this before, about how more so than European players, Brazilian players will choose their next club or plan their career around the World Cup and getting selected for that team, and they'll make sacrifices that other players won't make.
No doubt about it. I mean, the coach now, and this is a big thing, is Carlo Ancelotti, and he's loving it. He's loving, because all of his experience has been with European national teams. He played for Italy. He was assistant coach for Italy for a while as well. And he knows how a lot of the European players think it's a drag. And he just loves the fact that they're into it so much. I mean, there's a player you were talking about there, I think is a good example of so many of the things we're talking about. That's Gabriel Jesus.
Yeah.
Brazil, they've got this habit, and I love it. It's starting to get a little bit weakened, but I still think it's a great habit of decorating their streets for the World Cup. So you put bunting and streamers and street murals and so on. And 2014, no one knows who Gabriel Jesus is. He's not even a household name in his own home. He's one of those people decorating his own street. I think it's a brilliant thing to do. It's like a jubilee. Only you're not celebrating the royal family. You're celebrating yourselves. You're celebrating people who come from your own street. Because it is a triumph for the common man, isn't it? The World Cup. And come 2018, he's Brazil's centre forward. And in a good team, an attacking team, he doesn't manage a single goal. And his career has never recovered. That the trauma of not scoring a goal for Brazil in the 2018 World Cup has totally derailed his career, and it's made him kind of run away, I think, from the responsibility of being a goal scorer.
Yeah,
Richarlison, he says that he'll be out of a cold morning. How does he motivate himself in training? He imagines he's playing for Brazil in the World Cup final against Argentina. So it is vital for these players and the South Americans, just in terms of the amount of travelling they do for qualification. They make sacrifices for their national team that European players just wouldn't make.
And what about the style of football? Why don't we play like that in England?
I flew back. I'm in England at the moment. It's my mum's birthday today. 89 she is.
Yeah, I didn't think that looked like a Brazilian conservatory.
No. And also launching my book, Mundiales, South American History of the World Cup. On Friday, the day when I flew, in the morning, I was swimming in the sea with turtles. Now I'm sitting with the heating on, wearing a dressing gown, Noel Coward style. So I think climate has a great deal to do with it. Although this is a dynamic process, and football ideas are always going back and forth and back and forth. And one of Brazil's problems, I think, in recent years, is they were very successful there. That they won 2 World Cups and got to 3 finals in a row between 94 and 2002. But the method of play was always a little bit disappointing if you'd grown up on 70 and 82 and so on. And they got very obsessed with a counter-attack. And they'd come to the idea that they were splitting the midfield in 2, between 2 only defended and 2 who only attacked. So they haven't produced a kind of joyful box-to-box total midfielder. Maybe Bruno Guimarães is the closest that they've had. But like Kevin De Bruyne, who is the Brazilian Kevin De Bruyne? There hasn't been one for a while, And that's the type of the type of player that certainly from 82 and before you would have associated with Brazil. You can get into like national myths and false simplifications with this. You read some stuff about Brazilian football. It's all a carnival, and everyone's trying to express themselves, and no one cares how many goals they concede, and that is just absolute rubbish. It's all about winning. The story you were talking about there also of the collapse in 2014. That's all about not being able to live up to the tradition of being winners. And 2014 is an unbelievable. When they met up in their training ground in hit the hills outside Rio before the World Cup, they got 2 coaches there, both of whom have won the World Cup. So loads and loads of experience. And one of them says, "We've already got one hand on the World Cup." And that was the mood before the competition started. And the story is of things going gradually wrong until they go wrong all at once. As, over the course of the subsequent weeks, that faith that they're going to win just gets chipped away until the end in that game against Germany. It just collapses.
And has that defeat had a major impact?
Yes.
Is there a legacy to that defeat?
Yeah, it's become it's now entered the vocabulary. You could refer to any defeat in any walk of life as a 7-1. All you have to say is it's a 7-1. There's a distance which has grown up between a lot of the fans and the team, because they almost all play abroad. And it's funny you were mentioning there's some in the Premier League. There's a real resistance to this. They really don't like it.
Really?
When it's players of what they see as small clubs. Social media just rages when players from Wolves are picked up or so, or are selected. West Ham, even Tottenham Hotspur, clubs that are fighting relegation. A lot of the players who play for the national team, many of the fans don't really know so much anymore. Yeah, and if they're winning, that's not a problem. But if they're not winning, that's a huge problem. And remember, since it's now 24 years. So there are adults walking around who've never seen their country be world champion. And in those 24 years, every World Cup campaign has ended as soon as they've come up against the European side in the knockout stages.
We spoke to Kleberson earlier in the series. Obviously, he won the World Cup in 2002 with Brazil. And he was concerned about young Brazilians moving to Europe too early in their career. So is that also part of it as well?
Yes, I think it is. I think it does derail careers. There are some. I mean, Estevan is so unbelievably talented that I really don't think it's a problem in his case at all. You put any obstacle in front of him, he's going to jump it. But there was a teammate of his at Palmeiras called Luis Guilherme, and West Ham spent 25 million on him, something like that, and he came over having scored one professional goal. And West Ham had him for a year and a half or something, offloaded him to Sporting Lisbon. And at the time that they offloaded him, he had still scored one professional goal. He got nothing out of him at all. And in that case, I certainly think it's too early. But this is one of those things where one size doesn't fit all. I mean, the fellow who's just joined Bournemouth, Hyan, he's having a fantastic time. So it works for some, but it is a danger to many others.
You talk about the players there. So it feels like there's a lot of wingers that are good for Brazil at the moment. And it's interesting when you're talking about the midfielders a moment ago, Tim. I was thinking, over the last 10 years, I can't really think of attacking midfielders, but there's loads of number sixes, loads of defensive midfielders. And I think we often think of Brazil as being these flying forwards, but it's like actually they've given us loads of these number sixes. And indeed, Casemiro, Bruno Guimaraes, players who play in the Premier League who are going to be massive at that tournament.
Yes, lots of defensive midfielders, lots of centre-backs as well. I mean, the idea that Brazilian football gives no thought for defending is ludicrously stupid. I remember when South Africa were hosting their World Cup in 2010, they went big on Brazilian coaches, both a little bit in the club game as well. And they ended up very, very disappointed because they were saying all these Brazilian coaches know how to do is defend. Remember, Brazil pioneered the back four. When Brazil won the World Cup for the first time, 1958, it's a new formation, back four, defensive cover. They didn't concede a goal till the semi-finals. So finding that balance, because historically they've had so much attacking talent, attacking potency. A lot of the story of Brazilian football has been trying to find a balance, that's something that Ancelotti has to work very hard at, because what Ancelotti really wants to do, he wants to go with a front four, wants to do that. Because that's where Brazil's strength is, especially in the wingers. Rodrigo might have got in, but in one way, his injury kind of solves a selection dilemma.
Yeah.
Because I think it's probably going to be Estevan, who was really flowered under Ancelotti. Ancelotti gave him his first start. Rafinha of Barcelona.
Yeah.
Mateus Cunha of United, although João Pedro was putting in a fight. And then Vinny. So that's his front four. And one of the big questions for this World Cup is, can you really play that way? They played that way very well against Senegal at the Arsenal Stadium in November.
Yeah.
But the World Cup is not played in the conditions prevalent in the Arsenal Stadium in November. It's going to be played in searing heat. And can you really only play two in midfield in those conditions, especially when one of them is Casemiro, who's 34? So that I think is going to be a key question to Brazil's World Cup campaign.
Do you think having so many of their players playing in Europe affects their style of play? That when they're, international managers always say of national teams, you just don't get the sort of time with players. Yeah. So that, they're playing in a sort of European style, and then they're joining up with Brazil, and you're trying to make them play a different way. Or if players are elite, they can easily interchange.
Yeah, but also what's, I think, behind that question is the idea that they lose their natural flair and so on. And as I've said, they haven't had a Kevin De Bruyne in a long, long time. A lot of Brazilian football can be quite defensive. It's getting better now because with more money, the quality of players is getting better. The quality of the coaches is getting better as well. But Ancelotti watches a lot of games over here. Watches a lot of games in Brazil, and he'll say, look, the attacking quality isn't really here. It's all on the other side of the Atlantic. So the idea that they lose natural Brazilian flair going to Europe, I don't really know how true that one is. I think that there's there's those myths that you just get them off the beach and they go dancing the samba onto the football field. I mean, back in '58 when they won it for the first time, they had a full battery of physical preparation specialists. They had doctors. They had dentists. They even had a sports psychologist. And he was
dentists?
rubbish. Yeah, dentists. Yeah,
what?
Yeah. The condition of Brazilian teeth back then was, they needed a lot of work, and he was good on the jokes as well. So he was good from that. They even had a sports psychologist. They were just so open to all of these things. In 58, yeah, 62. I mean, one of the players from 58 and 62. And he was the coach in 70 and the assistant coach in 74, Mario Zagallo. I told him that England went to the World Cup in Chile in 62 without a doctor. And a player nearly died in Chile. He had a big health emergency. And Zagallo just couldn't believe it. And couldn't believe, because we had all of these things. We had all of these things. And that's one of the reasons that they were so good. They were taking it so seriously. It was like an affair of state, So in 70 when they won, they've done this training program worked out by NASA, the American Space Agency, in order to help them deal with the altitude and the temperature of Mexico City. So the physical preparation is something where historically I think they've often been ahead of the curve. And tactics as well. They invented the back four. Actually, Alf Ramsey never really admitted it. But when he won the World Cup in '66, he took a fair few things from the Brazil side. He took the back four. He took the idea of attacking fullbacks, and the fullbacks can be the wingers as well. All of that was being pioneered.
Got his teeth done
by Brazil. Yes, yeah.
He had a lovely smile, Sir Alf, didn't it?
It's never just a case of the natural talent. It's always the natural talent being supported by physical preparation and tactical organisation. And when they get those three aspects right, they can be very hard to stop.
In terms of that natural talent, Tim, we were saying before, we're so used to over the years there just being a litany of these players that England could never dream of producing. The Ronaldinhos, Romeros, Ronaldo, of course. Now, Vinny Jr. is the star of the team. Rafinha is obviously an amazing player, has done so well for Barcelona. Who's taken on the mantle left by Neymar and become the star man for Brazil? Who's the most dangerous player there? Is it Vinny Jr.?
Yeah, well, remember, Vinny Jr. worked so well with Ancelotti at Real Madrid.
Yeah.
So, yes. And one of the things they'll look to do, I think, is free him. He won't play just on the left wing. You remember that very successful season he had at Real after they'd sold Benzema?
Yeah.
And he was attacking the space in the penalty area. Now, I think that's something that they'll work on. But also Estevão. Estevão, as I said earlier, Ancelotti gave him his first start. Between September and November, he scored 5 goals for Brazil. It took Vinny years and years and years to get to 5 goals for Brazil. So the fact that Estevão hasn't played every game for Chelsea, I think is great, because there's obviously a little bit of a fear of end-of-season burnout, especially in the case of Estevão, who was playing solidly for Palmeiras, played the Club World Cup for Palmeiras against Chelsea, scored a cracker there in that game, and immediately after the final whistle, he becomes a Chelsea player, and he's straight into pre-season training. So this is going to be a key issue of the World Cup. I think one of the reasons that the last one was so good, the Qatar, was it was in the middle of the season. This one is going to be end of the season. There's going to be a lot of tired limbs being dragged around the field. So again, at the end of the season, in extreme heat, can Brazil really play 4 up front and only Casemiro and Bruno Guimaraes? I suspect in the hard games they'll have to put a third man in midfield.
But they're more used to that sort of climate than we are.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
So even Brazil are going to struggle in these conditions, you think?
Oh yeah. I mean, 94. Now 94, the last time it was in the States, it was the last time that Brazil had gone 24 years without winning the World Cup. So there's a little omen for you. I saw a few years ago the 2 coaches from that final, Sacchi of Italy and Barreira of Brazil, and I was saying it was just unreal. The heat was just it was unreal. It really was, and it ruined the game. And the Brazil side in '94 wasn't particularly spectacular, but it was built for the conditions. It was a very strong midfield side. It was a 4-4-2. They left the 2 strikers more or less on their own and said, get on with it. But they were solid behind. And that, I think, is interesting from the team this year, because the way that they're shaping up is totally different, with a battery of strikers and wingers and not so much in midfield. So whether they can do that in extreme heat, I think is going to be fascinating. We're going to have a lot of fun finding out.
Tim, you're not just an expert on Brazil, you're an expert on South American football. Obviously, Argentina are the holders. Who are the strongest South American nation going into this World Cup?
Well, Argentina, that golden moment goes on and on and on, and everything has gone their way since the World Cup. They won the Copa America, South America's equivalent of the Euros. They finished top by a mile in the qualification campaign, where all the 10 South American nations play each other home and away. And they found ways not to be so dependent on Messi. When the outstanding display in the qualification campaign was when they whooped Brazil 4-1, and Messi wasn't playing. They found ways to play without him.
Oh God!
So there are reasons to be optimistic about Argentina, but 2 problems. Number one is history. What they're trying to do has never been done before. No one has ever retained the World Cup in a different continent, and it is a different continent. North America is one thing, South America. The distance between them, just to give you an idea, the distance between Buenos Aires and Mexico City is further than that between London and a lot of cities in India. It's a long, long way away. So no one has ever done what Argentina will be trying to do later this year. And also, where they're struggling, I think, is revealing defenders. It's the same defensive unit that they had last time. And if you remember the World Cup in Qatar, in game after game after game, they got themselves in a strong position, and that defence nearly threw the whole thing away. And they still really haven't replaced Otamendi. He is suspended for their first game. But he still gets a game. They really don't trust the defenders, new defenders that they've got coming through. And so you kind of think, an expanded World Cup, there's an extra knockout round now. Surely in one of these games, that defence is going to have the collie wobbles and it's going to cost them.
And what sort of state is Messi in? How sharp do you think he's going to be this summer?
Yeah, well, he's always said, well, I might not do it. I might do it. I might not do it. It's clear that he's going to be playing in the World Cup. One of his reasons, I think, for being in Major League Soccer in the States is that the calendar is less demanding. So he'll have some gas in the tank, but I think it's going to be spurts, and I don't necessarily think he's going to be playing every game now. They can put him out and bring him in accordance with how fit he is. And the team really is. It's Messi and his fan club. He's surrounded with his fan club, and the others will run and run and run for him. But it is greatly, I think, to their benefit that they found other ways of playing that aren't as dependent on him.
That is terrifying, because the rest of us think, well, if Messi's gone, they're not the force they were. But it turns out they've evolved. They're even stronger without him.
A lot of good players, though. Julian Alvarez.
Indeed, yeah, and Alvarez is a class act. And one player who will know this very, very well is your man at Forest, Murillo, because his only Brazil cap was in that game away to Argentina. It was the last game under the previous coach, and this is the game that got Ancelotti the gig. And I remember watching Murillo before the game in the national anthem and thinking, my God, he looks scared out of his mind.
He looked terrified.
And he was taken off at half time, and he was having a mare. It was not really his fault. I think it was a lack of defensive organisation, and that was Argentina without Messi. That was Julian Alvarez just running amok.
Your book is coming out soon, Tim. Mundiales, A History of South American Teams in the World Cup. It covers every World Cup from a South American perspective. So, given your research, and your expertise in the area, what does it take to win the World Cup?
It's a knockout competition, isn't it? So you need luck at a draw along the way. That helps. That helps a lot. But it's something that I've seen stressed by so many World Cup teams from different cultures, is that the group really matters. The players who don't play can be really, really important as well. Really important in keeping morale high, in pushing the first choice players. I mean, if you think of some of the terrible England World Cups recently, the Golden Generation World Cups, where it really seemed that just being away from home for that length of time was a real sacrifice for them. They're not used to it, are they? The England players. There's maybe more playing abroad now, but you always got the idea that they were bored and they were unhappy and they weren't really enjoying it very much. So having a group that pulls together, and this is exactly the thing that Ancelotti has been so delighted by, just how happy the Brazilian players are to be together. They can speak their own language, they can sing their own songs, they can tell their own jokes. You can't really do that in the dressing rooms where they make their living. So that kind of cohesive group,
That's such a good point to actually when they're all it's like a relief for them. They finally get back to who they really are.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas the English players won't feel like that because they're already home.
Yeah, exactly. I think that makes a significant difference. I think.
So we need to get our players playing abroad.
Yeah, or take them abroad more. Is it an exaggeration to say defence wins titles? More often, I mean, Argentina won that World Cup against France with the last minute save by the Villa keeper Martinez. That goes in. It's all over. It's all over. And this is my fear for Argentina this time round. I think the defence is going to mess them up once, and that's going to be once too many. Because I think in a knockout competition, the Irish Jack Charlton method is possible. You can grind your way through. If you don't concede, you can grind your way through a knockout competition.
Well, when we got to the Euros final in 2021, we didn't concede till the semi-final. It was really built on defensive strength, that Southgate England team.
Yeah, and in a league campaign, you'd be dropping too many points that way, wouldn't you? But in a cup competition, I think defence can really get you a long, long way.
Finally, Tim, what's the view of the Brazilian public of England and of our national team?
Much better than it was. Much better than it was. Because there are so many big stars around. I mean, this is, I think, a bit of a cause for concern. I think the fact that Europe has learnt to produce talent. I don't think anyone really saw that coming over here. I mean, when that Brazil-Belgium game in 2018, when Belgium won, the most stereotypical South American player on the field is Eden Hazard. Low centre of gravity, can go either way, difficult to knock off the ball. And they protected their lead, just giving the ball to Eden Hazard. I remember talking to the fellow who was then the coach a couple of months after the game, and he couldn't get over what Hazard had done to his defence by his ability to keep the ball. So Europe in general is. When I saw one of the best Argentine pundits, he was a player. He was one of those Maradonas who didn't quite make it, Diego Latorre. He was talking about the kind of players that come out through England, and he was saying that they look like old-fashioned Argentine street footballers now. Some of the talent that comes out of England. So there is a respect for that. While meanwhile, and I think you kind of touched on this, the decline of street football in Brazil, I think, is a problem.
Really?
In terms of producing talent. I do, yeah. I think the greatest production line of footballers in the history of the game is the Brazilian street. And what has happened over in the big cities in recent decades is those streets have either been made too violent, or they've been just taken over by building, and so those spaces where kids grew up, instead of that, you get them into a safe space like futsal, and futsal is all very well, but I remember asking Zico, because he played futsal, where did you learn more, futsal or street football? And he said street football. There's no comparison. Street football was my college, if you like. Neymar was a futsal player, I think, and part of that is going to ground so often, diving so often, because the street footballer, especially if you're little and talented, it's a basic survival skill of when to let go, isn't it? When are you going to let go of the ball, and when are you going to go for the big dribble? And Neymar has come up in a completely different fashion, with the presence of a referee there, and his defence strategy is not knowing when to let go. His defence strategy is drawing the foul and then falling over and looking to the referee and saying, "I'm being fouled." I saw Johan Cruyff the other day, a clip of Johan Cruyff talking about street football, and he was saying one of the great things about it is those surfaces are hard. You don't dive. You don't go down. It hurts. It hurts. So
that's a great idea, actually. We should bring in concrete pitches.
Yeah.
To counteract diving.
For players who dive a lot.
Yeah.
Resurface
Premier
the
League.
pitches.
Yeah. Premier League and international tournaments, all concrete pitches. Tim, this has been an absolute treat, picking your brains. And your book, Mundiales, A History of South American Teams in the World Cup, sounds absolutely superb. Thank you so much for joining us.
It was my pleasure. And I'm glad that, I hope at the end of this Premier League season that neither of you are entirely happy. Someone whose sentiment at the other end of the Seven Sisters Road. I fear for the next few weeks we can't all be friends.
And that's okay. We can have diplomatic relations. Tim, thank you so much. Jacob, thank you as well. Always a pleasure. Now, we've not got long until the World Cup this summer, so if you've just discovered the podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to make sure you get every episode. There's loads more episodes we've done with Stuart Pearce, David Seaman, Kleberson, Emmanuel Petit. There's a whole back catalogue for you to enjoy. And do get in touch with your stories of going to previous World Cups. Did you go margarita mad at Mexico 86? Did you go currywurst crazy at Germany 06? Email us, wintheworldcup@talksport.co.uk, and give us a follow on Instagram @HowToWinTheWorldCup. See you next week.